Hey guys, Collin Chi, Certified Nutritional Consultant, bringing you guys another talk today. Today, I'm going to be talking about my problems with the word debunked and modern skepticism. Okay, modern skepticism in this day and age is scientific skepticism. Okay, skeptics are very paradigm locked into science and believing that it is the one and only way to truth or proof or knowledge. Now, using science and using the scientific method to arrive at these absolute truths, as if we can really absolutely truly know anything. Okay, so this contrasts, and now these skeptics are often very, they're scientific skeptics, so they're skeptical against anything that's supernatural, paranormal, spiritual, mystical, UFOs, ghosts, aliens, crop circles, homeopathy, alternative medicine, it goes on and on. So now in that skepticism, they become very dogmatic. Okay, so I'm just setting up this whole point, and then I'm going to talk to you about what all this video is going to entail. I'm going to talk about debunking, the etymology of the word, and dogma, etc. But so they become dogmatic in saying that science is the only way, and science is the unquestionable truth, or arriving at, well, this is the unquestionable truth. Oh, it's been debunked. It's been proven, through science. It's been proven, and so the debate is over. The word debunked is in this past tense form, and so I have an issue with this. This past tense form, as if it's settled, as if the science is settled, and they don't talk about, and they don't allow for any other forms of arriving at truth or knowledge or proof. And this is the definition of dogma, that this one way is the unquestionable way, or that this is the unquestionable truth. And that the science is settled. See, it's a past tense word. Rather than debunk, the solution I'm going to propose at the end is that we should use the word, instead of, a video on aliens are debunked, or let's say you watch a video that says, just the title is aliens debunked, or crop circles debunked, or UFOs debunked. Instead of that, it should be UFOs challenged, or alternative medicine challenged. This gives you this open-endedness of speech that we need to change. We need to have, instead of this absolute finality type of, that's the final, the facts are in, it's over, the debate's over, it's proven through science, etc., etc. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the ancient form of skepticism and how it differs from this. The ancient Greek form was all about the suspension of judgment, whereas this day and age, all we do is make judgments on things. It's the opposite. We study things through empirical science, and then we declare a conclusion that is true or that it's false. And then we have to take a side on things. So let me talk to you guys about this. I'm going to talk to you guys about the etymology of the word debunked, and also the history of skepticism. So modern skepticism, again, is scientific skepticism, whereas the ancient form is philosophical skepticism. That was the original form. Okay, so let me get into this. So the ancient form is what's called Pyrrhonism. Okay, there's also the two ancient forms. There's two ancient schools in Greece, the Pyrrhonists and the academic skeptics, and I'm talking a little bit about both of them. The most original was the Pyrrhonist or Pyrrhonism form of skepticism. So this was started by Pyrrho of Elis in 360 BC. This was a guy who was a philosopher who traveled with Alexander the Great, who went to India. He learned from the Gymnosophists, and they are said to have influenced him in his beliefs, or beliefs is the wrong word, but in his ideas about skepticism. And there's also even parallels with Pyrrhonism to Buddhism that have been drawn. So there's possibilities of different influence, but the whole point of Pyrrhonism is the suspension of judgment. Okay, they refused to make judgments on things. that are not evident. Okay, so nothing can be known for certain, according to Pyrrhonists, except for appearances. Okay, and not even that statement can be known for certain. Okay, this is the ultimate humbleness, or realizing that you really know nothing, that the limits of human knowledge are very limited, that we can only know so much. We can't know a thing in itself. We can't know the true essence of a thing or the nature of a thing, because we are not inside that thing. We are humans. Things come through our senses. Our senses are relative. They're different between people. And so, again, they don't make any judgments on anything unless it, unless it appears as evident. Okay? Nothing is known for certain except for Nothing can be known for certain except for appearances, and they realize that the appearances are just appearances. They are not absolute truths. Now, both forms of skepticism in the ancient world realize this, academic skepticism and Pyrrhonism. However, academic skepticism believed that there are probabilities, that there's a reasonable or probable thing. Something can be more reasonable or more probable to be true. Whereas the Pyrrhonists don't allow that. They don't allow for probabilities. Okay, so again, Pyrrhonists, it's all about eudaimonia with Pyrrhonists, which is happiness, or the goal of this skepticism is happiness, or the good life, or good spirit. Okay, which is a tranquil life, a philosophical life, a reflective life. That is one that is a mind of tranquility that is imperturbed, okay, or also known as ataraxia. Okay, the whole nothing can be known for certain except for appearances was called a catalepsy or a catalepsia in ancient times. So these are the Greek words. Okay, now how does one arrive at this having no views? So if you have no views, again, if you have no views, then you are basically, you can be happy, because then you don't have to sit there and defend your views. So without views, according to them, was called adoxastis. Okay, being without views. If you're without views and you are aclineus, uninclined toward one side or another, then you can reach eudaimonia. Okay, they also believed in what's called acrodantus, which is unwavering in our refusal to choose a side. Okay, so they refuse to choose a side, and the reason they do this is because they can be more happy that way, because they don't have to sit there and defend each other. They're not engaged in all these arguments online, on all these blogs, and all these, on all these different subjects. If you take this ideological viewpoint, if you have an opinion, if you have a set in stone, this is my opinion, this is what I think the truth is, then you have to then defend it. And the problem with this is, according to them, none of this really works, because you can have equal justification on both sides of the argument. According to them. Whereas, again, the academic skeptics believe you can have probabilities, or one side that is more reasonable to be true. These guys say, no, there's equal evidence you can support both sides with. We don't take sides. We get rid of that whole game, and we achieve happiness that way. To arrive at an absolute truth, which the Pyrrhonists say you cannot do, and you can't even know whether you can. There's nothing that can be known for certain, okay, except appearances, and we can't even know that for certain, right? Remember, that's their main tenet. If you try to arrive at absolute certainties, you can't do it, because it involves either circular reasoning or an infinite regress. Okay, circular reasoning is when you start where you finish, okay, and it just comes around full circle. And the premises, there's certain assumptions that are made in order for you to ever arrive at any absolute truth. You have to make certain assumptions, and science itself makes a lot of assumptions. that we don't realize. And also there's this infinite regress where you have to provide, even if you provide proof of something, you then have to provide proof again of that something, and then proof of that something, and then proof of that something, ad infinitum. It never ends, okay? It just goes on forever, and you can never arrive at any end with that. So the assumptions of science need to be talked about, because just because they do, otherwise you're not going to agree with what I'm talking about here. Okay, so a basic assumption of science is that anything can be proven, or that things can be proven through natural processes, that the universe is mechanistic and materialistic, that the world is actually real. Humans can accurately perceive and understand the physical universe. Natural processes are sufficient for understanding the natural world. Okay, nature operates uniformly throughout the universe in space and time. Rupert Sheldrake had his own. Again, everything is essentially mechanical. All matter is unconscious. You know, these are the assumptions of science that you have to make in order to arrive at these scientific proof or truths. The total amount of matter and energy is always the same. The laws of nature are fixed. Nature is purposeless, and evolution has no goal or direction. All biological inheritance is material. Minds are inside heads and are nothing but the activities of brains. Memories are stored as material traces in brains. Unexplained phenomena like telepathy are illusory. Mechanistic medicine is the only kind that really works. Okay, it's this whole thing that, you know, this paradigm that these skeptics are locked into is the paradigm of science, which is materialism, mechanical things, secularism, you know, capitalist, just all these things, reason, logic, absolutism, realism, left brain, you know, and it's an ideology. These things. There's other things to life than just those things. Okay, so, and these people. So let me get into the whole debunk thing, and then I'll come back to that. I'll talk more about that, because I want to get onto that topic before you guys get all distracted by everything else I'm talking about. So the word debunked, okay, it means to remove bunk. Bunk is nonsense, hogwash, hooey, baloney, you know, anything that's pretentious or unrealistic or deemed false or mythical. And so debunkers try to basically, you know, remove bunk, remove nonsense, and to, you know, basically discredit anything that is empty talk like that, that's not that doesn't have scientific backing. So now the word debunk has an interesting little etymology. It's a slang word, and it originally comes from this guy Felix Walker, who, so Congress was debating on whether Missouri should be in the Union as a free state or as a slave state. And they were coming to a vote, and Felix Walker, this congressman from Buncombe, North Carolina, stands up and gives this long-winded, irrelevant speech for his town, basically. That was considered irrelevant and pointless. They were already coming to a decision, and it was just empty talk. And so these characteristics of, you know, this nonsense talk got ascribed to Buncombe, North Carolina. And then this was February 25th, 1820. And then 1923, an American novelist, William Woodward, he writes a novel called Bunk, and he uses the word debunked and debunk, and, you know, the rest is history. So, so again, you know, this whole debunked mentality you know, it's people on, again, it's these YouTubers and these, you know, mainstream media people that think that they're so egotistical and, you know, presumptuous that they think that they can settle a subject, and that they can declare that this is absolutely the case in their 5-minute video in an attempt to sound smart and not really truly understand the topic. You know, I find that debunkers often don't really dig into all the sides of the topic. They don't really have a good holistic perspective of the topic. It just comes off as dogma because they're saying this is the one absolute truth. This is the way, my way or the highway, and I'm declaring it. It's dogma. It's not true science, and it's not true skepticism. It's not the suspension of judgment. They're making judgments on things based on this limited research. So, you know, and I also just have a problem with the word, you know, debunked in general. It's basically just clickbait. You know, it's just clickbait for people to click on things, you know, online that, you know, makes it sound like an official video or something, so people click on it. And, you know, I think the reason people do this is because they have to, people can't live with uncertainty. They have to have this certainty in their lives, and this, that, you know, because if you live with uncertainty and you're open to the question, and you're open to the possibilities, and you look at all sides of a picture, then it's harder for you to have this one set identity, which identity to me is almost like social currency, and people don't know how to interact socially without some type of identity. You know, that's what you exchange with other people. You exchange your opinions, your views, your, you know, and again, you know, the Pyrrhonists have no views. They refuse to choose a side. So what would they have to exchange with people in society? They would just be philosophizing and questioning and wondering, and you know, rather than, you know, stating their opinions to people and exchanging those. And again, it's uncomfortable to not have an opinion, right? You know, to hold two opposing views in your mind at one time, in a way, is cognitive dissonance, which is considered an uncomfortable thing. Yet it's also considered among some very smart people that this is a genius quality, to be able to hold two opposing views and to hold the question in your mind and still be able to practically live. Now, this is where the academic skeptics, you know, their probabilities ideas were that, well, it's a way to be practical in life. It's a practical guide to life. If there's probabilities, then you can make decisions more easily. Now, this whole non-judgment, and I won't make a decision, I won't choose a side of Pyrrhonism, you know, it sounds very hot, you know, wishy-washy, Libra-esque, and undecisive. But the Pyrrhonists make choices based on appearances. So their criteria of action is based on appearances. They don't make actions based on their philosophy. So, and again, they realize that the appearances are just appearances, and they're not necessarily the truth. They're just their preferences. So you could see this, you could see yourself being very inactive, or what's called apraxia, which is one of the best, you know, and most challenging criticisms of Pyrrhonism is what's called apraxia. You know, that how can you live, how can you do anything, how can you take any action if you don't take any views or have any opinions, how can you make any decisions in your life? Now, I will give the debunkers this, that it is better to question and to doubt than it is to just accept things blindly, because that, in a way, is dogmatism as well. And just to be unquestioning at all and just accept what your parents told you or what society told you or what you grew up, you know, learning or hearing, you know, that's the worst form. So I will give them that. And sometimes skeptics do, you know, modern scientific skeptics or debunkers, sometimes they do a good job, you know, looking at different, you know, scientific points and putting them all together and making a good case. They're not all bad, just like anything. It's just that the really bad ones are bad. And so, and I really like science myself. I use science. You have to use science. I in a way side with the academic skeptics because even though I don't want to side with any side particular, because of the fact that, yeah, I do want to try and attempt to find those probabilities, so I can make practical decisions and innovations. Now, I will say that these debunkers and these modern scientific skeptics also, I feel like, often are anti-progress, anti-innovation, they're anti-theory, they're anti-growth. I feel like sometimes they're often just stuck and set in their ways and dogmatic, as I said, and just they're anti-expansion, they're pro-status quo, very stagnant. They can be negative. They're pro-contraction and fear. They're not possibility thinkers. They're not creative thinkers. Even though science is supposed to be the joy of discovery, right? But science these days and scientific skepticism these days takes the form of just against religion and against the paranormal, against the supernatural. It's science versus. It's not just pure, real science is, well, I don't know certain things, and we're still discovering, and we don't settle. In medical studies, they often say, well, we don't have enough evidence yet to form a conclusion, so more studies need to be done. So there is some of that in, mainstream medicine, of the suspension of judgment. However, there's not enough suspension of judgment is what I'm getting at. People really want to form this opinion, have this identity, and believe there's some type of absolute truth out there, because they can't live without that for some reason. And so beyond that, let me talk to you guys about, a prime example would be, of some of these people I'm talking about, Penn and Teller's bullshit show or Bill Nye's Saves the World show. These are the prime examples. Bill Nye sits there and, tries to debunk and tries to proclaim that, alternative medicine is just an alternative to real medicine. It's not real medicine. It's charlatanism. And, he basically attacks anything that's outside of mainstream science. He attacks UFOs, aliens, crop circles, astrology, palmistry. He attacks like literally every, homeopathy. It's just ridiculous, and and he hasn't really truly looked at all sides of the picture. And here's an engineer tackling subjects like vaccinations and alternative medicine, and it's just ridiculous. It's not his forte, and he's just a corporate funded goon. So I find that these guys are often capitalist, corporate funded, just privileged, egotistical, short-sighted, often not non-scientific people, materialist people. I mean, look at Penn and Teller. They're just entertainers. They're not even scientists, and they're tackling subjects like vaccination and recycling and things like that. It's just crazy. And it's just pure, and the worst form of skepticism is the worst form of debunkers are the ones that don't even actually back up their point with any evidence whatsoever. And then, of course, the ones that do back things up, it's only scientific evidence. There's no appreciation of theory or anecdotal evidence. Again, these guys are anti-theory, and theories are the way we move forward, the way we progress. To make some crackpot theory that goes in the face of all the settled, conservative science out there can sometimes actually become the truth. I mean, it's just like, the world is, the world revolves around the sun, or the sun revolves around Earth. I mean, that was, at the time that, at the time way back, obviously we thought that the sun revolved around the Earth. And then, it was considered just blasphemy and heretical to even propose anything otherwise, and just a theory. And, and again, science is, we have to use science. It has its place. It's just not everything. And I just want you guys to realize that we need to go back to a time where we suspend our judgment a little more, and we need to have a little bit looser language about our science. So I'm going to give you some examples of solutions, of words and phrases we can use. Again, instead of the word debunked, say, well, say homeopathy challenged, or instead of homeopathy debunked, or and I also hate the word pseudoscience, and soft sciences, dowsing debunked, or Mythbusters would be another example of a debunking type show. But sometimes the debunking type shows actually prove some of the pseudo-scientific, things. So it's interesting what we can do with science sometimes. But anyway, here are some solutions. So instead of saying, again, it's been debunked, or it's been proven, or whatever, we can say, well, we don't know enough. This is stuff that I wrote, so I'm going to read my own stuff that I wrote here. Well, we don't know enough about it yet to draw a final conclusion, and we never will, because there is no such thing as finality or the absolute, and we can't even know if that statement is true. But at this time, the statistical probability, after having thrown out all the studies with major conflicts of interest, is that blank is probably true or probably close to the truth, parentheses, or probably false or close to being false, at this time, within the limits of human knowledge and within the limits of the scientific paradigm. Or we could say, according to the limited perspective of science at this time, see, indicating at this time gives that relativityness to it. Okay, that's needed. According to the limited perspective of science at this time, based on meta-analyses and reviews, which have analyzed 99% of the data/studies from the U.S. and abroad on the subject, which have considered the balance or weight of evidence, the probability, once again, according to the paradigm of science only, at this time, is that blank is most likely not of use to most human beings, and with the understanding that what is useful is true, we therefore declare blank as false as it appears to us. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. That is a much more wishy-washy way of talking about our science, which we ought to. We should have a more open-ended probability. No, this is the probability that it's true. This is not the truth with a capital T. Okay, and again, the word debunked, instead of that, you could use the word challenged. Okay, so these are a few of my ideas about this. Let me see if I covered everything I wanted to. Again, dogma is distinct from philosophical skepticism. Okay. When you claim the science is settled on vaccines, GMOs, whatever, you're being a dogmatist. Okay. A scientific dogmatist. Try to have an open mind, and these people, the big thing, see, here's the thing, religion was the biggest cause of, problems, for the past, for 1500 years prior, minus the most recent 500 years. It was the biggest cause of, dogma and killing people and wars and death. And this day and age, it's going to be the opposite. This day and age, it's going to be the dogma of science and technology, that it's the only one way to the truth, rather than religion. This is the modern age of science. We're in the Aquarian age. The Aquarian age is a fixed sign, the I know age. We think we know things, and we think we know absolute truths. Science is going to be the problem of this age. Okay, it also could end up being the solution, but right now it's becoming the problem. Okay, it's making us really indoctrinated into this materialist, all we do is live for pleasure, technology, short-sightedness. These Penn and Teller, Bill Nye, these guys, they're very short-sighted. They don't consider the long-term effects of things on the earth. You know, Penn and Teller, for instance, you know, they say that recycling is not, you know, it's actually costs more money to recycle than it does saving money and saving and having an economic benefit, except for aluminum cans, they say. But they don't consider that these giant piles of trash were just piling up of toxic plastic and garbage. They think, oh, we can just build a golf course over that, and it's not really a problem, because they just think about their short-sighted, the short term. They don't think about the long-term effects on the earth that could have. They're only thinking economically, that right now in this day and age, you know, we can save money if we don't recycle. But what about the earth? They don't think about nature. These guys are so dehumanized, so denaturized, so civilized, so taken away from nature, that they always are on the side of, you know, being against nature, which is just crazy. And pro-science, pro-technology, pro-materialism, pro their privileged lives. So anyway, this is just my gripe and my you know, my problems with this secular, capitalist, fascist, conventional, you know, day and age, superficial day and age, modern age that we live in, based on logic, reason, realism. These are all ideologies that we need to realize are just ideologies, and they have limits, and we need to admit that there are assumptions and dogma that come out of science. Not just religion, not just supernatural, paranormal, pseudoscience, if you will. The suspension of judgment is also known as aphaectic in Greek. We need more suspension of judgment. Again, I mentioned adoxastos, without views, ataraxia, imperturbed, aclinaeus, uninclined toward one side or the other, acrodantus, unwavering in a refusal to choose a side. And this is how you achieve eudaimonia. Okay, these guys had a much more complex understanding of this picture than we do. Okay, and I'm for multi-perspectival viewpoints, a holistic view, a well-rounded view of the entire or whole picture, rather than just one side of things, and rather than duality. You know, we should have multi. Okay, multi. We should explore the whole picture, not just dogmatize our opinions. We need to suspend our judgments a little more. Anyway, Collin Chi, certified nutritional consultant. Hope you enjoyed it as always. Hit me up at collinchi@gmail.com if you'd like a consultation in nutrition. I know this is not really anything about nutrition, but that's my specialty. As always, rise.